how do we track user activity? Well, there are a couple of keys in HKey current user you can drill down into that help track user activity. The user assist keys are specific to an end user, and they're tagged by that user assist and the globally unique identifier count. And that user assist, that means that they've actually asked for help in a lot of cases, and that's going to leave artifacts other places. Now the big one that's been more and more populated by the newer operating systems is what are called the MRU. That's most recently used key sets. And they're sprinkled throughout. If you type in a search in regedit 32, if you type in MRU and look for a key, you're going to see a lot of different keys in there. This happens to be down in Software, Microsoft Windows, Current Version, Explorer, Recent Docs. This is just one. This is the Explorer Recent Docs, but most recently used for all sorts of different applications on your machine. This is a very rich place to go, and remember, it's scattered throughout the machine. It'll tell you exactly what the user was doing. When you're searching for the files and folders, search for the terms. You might want to look for Search Assistant and ACMRU. So those might be joined together, but I just look for the MRUs in a lot of cases. That's tracking the user activity. Let's take a look at some system information. What's the computer's name? Has it been changed? What was the last shutdown? We can look at the system control set, and notice this is control set 00X. That X will be incremented 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to however many last shutdowns there were. In those shutdowns, what we're generating with a successful shutdown is something called the last known good. The current control set gets incremented as we go along. We could actually go back to past control sets and get information about the system and about a little bit of the user activity, especially how often they're rebooting. Time zone information. Dig down into system current control set control time zone information. This may help you to match up your timeline because this particular machine is in the wrong time zone. It was set up using Eastern time, and this is a Central time machine, so I have to map that back and be aware of the time because we need the timeline for this particular set of activities, and we need the super timeline, which is all of the activities according to this machine and this investigation that we're doing. You can look inside shares. You can figure out the shares in Landman server /shares. It will tell you what shares have been placed on this machine. That lets you know as an investigator that there is some data somewhere else. Maybe you go back and get another warrant for that other information. By the way, it's going to be gone at that point. USB removable storage. Now we dig down into local machine system current control set enum, that's enumerate, USB store. And it's going to have a bunch of subkeys. Every time you get a new USB device and plug it in, when it successfully registers with the machine and pops up that little window that says you have a new device, what would you like to do? You have a new device, would you like to use this as this particular thing? Would you like to open it with a file and folder view? What would you like to do with it? As soon as you see that message pop up, that particular registry key has completed successfully for that machine, so you know about other devices that have been connected to this machine. That leads you back in your investigation activity to go back and look for, hey, look, they used all of these different USB drives. You should be able to find some more of those. You only gave me the box right here. Go back and get the USB drives because they've got external this and external that, and it will tell you all about them. Now notice in the subkey here, we actually have a disk and vendor. That will tell us who this product was made by. So was it a Maxtor USB, or was it this kind of USB? Was it Kensington, blah, blah, blah? Well, disk and vendor information is right inside of that. That's very elegant for us. You can say, you should be looking for this. How we could help the crime scene investigators if we're not there, if we're back in the lab, we can say, this disk and vendor, let's say it's this particular USB drive and it's specific to that disk and vendor. This is the product name for this. So the product name, when I looked on the web, it shows all these different form factors. You're looking for this thing. You're looking for a USB drive with a thumb on the end of it because it was from this particular company. You're looking for a USB drive that says PNY on the outside of it. You're giving the investigators or the people that are collecting data at the scene, you're giving them a lot more information to go on so that you've said, this is the form factors that this comes in, go back and get this data for me. Oh, and by the way, it does tell you the last time that the USB drive was connected to the system. That should give you some other hints. Wireless set service identifiers, all the different wireless networks that this machine has connected to, will be listed in this particular subkey. Notice it's got a globally unique identifier at the end, so this is going to be that really long string there, and you need to be patient with it and say this is all the different ones that I've dealt with on this particular machine. This is much more valuable on, say, a laptop because then we can know where the person has been taking the laptop and where they've been plugging in a lot of cases. Now, sometimes you're going to get some weird information that isn't going to tell you anything. It just says wireless access and doesn't tell you the location on that data. If you can match up the time that this wireless set service identifier was executed and GPS coordinates with some files that have been laid out on the machine, so you've got your timeline and you say this USB device, this wireless set service identifier was recorded at this date, and during that date, here were these different files. One of those files was an image file at that particular time that was taken. Maybe you can look at that image file and say, oh, this is a picture of a Starbucks, and he took a picture of him sitting down with that woman that actually helped him with this illicit particular activity. There, we've got some match up there, and we've put somebody in a particular place at a particular time. Remember, images have a lot of detailed GPS data in them most of the time. We'll get to that in the GPS section, actually the file and image section. What things have been mounted on this computer? So this mounted device stores information about devices, volumes on an NTFS file system. It could be that they've actually mounted a particular volume there and it's located somewhere else. That would usually, if it's USB, it would be identified that way. If you dig down into system mounted devices, it'll tell you about the other particular volumes. It may be that they created a volume and then hid that volume inside of the operating system. That means that we need to go back to find out at the very beginning of our investigation how big the physical drive was, how big our image is, and are there different gaps in that image where there may be a hidden file system. So mounted devices will give us a little indicator of them playing around and hiding those volumes from us. Switching gears here from that adversarial situation where we've got a local adversary, where we've got the end user is the adversary, to somebody who's out there on the internet attacking us from a malware standpoint. When malware is being delivered, what a lot of malware people, what a lot of evildoers on the internet want to do is they want to reinfect this machine, or they want to keep control of this machine. And how they do it in a lot of cases is with the auto start locations. You need to figure out where those auto start locations are because they can be scattered throughout the machine. It's not just sitting in one folder where the startup is. That is one piece of it, but auto start locations can be sprinkled throughout the machine and hidden down in sub directory that you would never pay any attention to. But now that we know that directory, we can drill down in there and say, okay, what file is inside of here? Because that file is used as a component of the malware to turn on Netcat and then to establish a connection on the outside. So that's auto start locations. When a user logs into a machine, they're going to give us a little bit of data about themselves in the registry. We're going to learn about the run once, the policies, the run, the Windows run. This is going to tell us when the user has interacted with the machine, and then we can establish a pattern of activity, and this will help us with our timeline. Okay, let's talk tools here. Regedit, Regedit 32 aren't going to do you any good as a forensics investigator. They're end user tools. They're not really They're not really tools for what we do. And so there are two tools that I strongly urge you to use that are outside of the big named vendors. And one of them is RegRipper. And also by the same vendor, there's something called RegSlack. These are both free tools. Now, RegRipper is associated with the Harvey book. I'll show you an image of that at the end in the resources section. RegSlack is one of his other tools. And I want to talk about RegSlack because we need to think about this registry as a database. What happens in a lot of cases is registry keys are deleted and the values are deleted and there's unallocated space inside of the SAM Hive, Security Accounts Manager. RegSlack will go in there and say, I have found inside of the database, I have found in the Slack space the portion of a particular key. So even if the user goes in and deletes that key and cleans it out of all the different areas, what's going to happen is we're going to examine the registry not as if it were a true file, but as if it were a series of bits that we were a series of hexadecimal representations, and we could pull it off of the actual hard drive. Now what we're doing is we're saying there's Slack space to be examined from a registry point of view. Your regular file carving utilities with their keyword searches in them are only going to look for the word fraud or the word drugs or something like that. This tool, RegSlack, is actually going to look for keys in the registry, which is a very different type of information for file carving. So it focuses in on file carving of the database of the registry.